Good morning, everyone. It's Mary, and it's time for another episode of Monday Morning Leadership Bites. And I want to talk about the importance of discernment as a leader. Last couple of weeks I've been ruminating on a decision I need to make, and it's basically my next steps of what I want to do. And many of you who know me personally know that I'm a Christian, and therefore one of the tools that I use is prayer. And so this is no different. I took this to prayer. And I simply, when I'm praying, I often just ask for discernment and wisdom in a specific area. And this was no different. And the only thing that was different is I asked that it be clear, that there be undeniable what I need to do next, and left it at that. And then yesterday I was coming back from Birmingham, visiting my great aunt for her birthday, and I got stuck in traffic. What should have been a 90-minute trip took me 2.5 hours. There was tons of traffic. There were several accidents, and I just got to the point where I had listened to some music and I listened to some books on tape, and that wasn't doing it for me. And so I turned everything off, and I was driving along, and something told me to call a former coworker of mine, Neil King, who I consider to be a friend. And we don't talk very often, and oftentimes we play a little phone tag before we actually connect. But I said, I'll give him a call and leave a message, and he answered, and it's kind of rare that he answers right away. And we had this really great conversation. And I told him, hey, here's what's going on. And no matter what I told him, he put a positive spin on it. And he really encouraged me. He challenged me. He built me up. We had a great laugh at some of our past escapades and the experiences we had when we used to work together and on some of the projects we've been on and the things we had to endure. And at the end of it, he pretty much just gave me everything I needed to hear. And a part of that was, hey, you've done this before. I know you. I know how you think. And how is this any different? Just do what you normally do. And that's exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. So he pretty much took me right to the driveway of my house. And when I ended that call, I had the sense of clarity. I knew at least what my next step or what I needed to do to get to my next step. And so I felt as if my prayer was answered. And it got me thinking about the discernment piece of it, because I asked for discernment and that's exactly what I got. So before we go any further, let's define discernment, because I think it's an important quality as a leader. So I got a couple definitions here. If you don't mind, I'm going to read them to you. But one, there's knowledge and wisdom, and that is different from discernment. That within judgment, the discernment involves going past the mere perception of something, or past the nuances of the judgment, and you look at something's qualities or your properties, and you look at those little things and say, okay, you pick out what really is going on. You can kind of get to the root of the matter. Another definition says discernment is the still small voice that's inside of us that tells us when we should take a course of action or when something doesn't feel quite right. And then lastly, discernment is the ability to find the root of a matter through intuition and rational thought. So while discernment has taken over religious context, mainly because it is in Scripture, and therefore the last couple centuries it has kind of gone favor in the religious context, it is not a religious attribute. It is very much a leadership attribute. And it's one that leaders, I think, will take you from being a great leader to being a truly gifted leader. So here are 4 ways that you can help improve your sense of discernment. Number 1, you want to look at past successes. One of the things that I did with Neil on the phone is we talked about, hey, even though it was 15 years ago, in a lot of cases I forgot about some of the stories and some of the adventures that we had in situations we were in that we were able to get out of and solve. And it led to more and more successes for us in our early career. And so being able to look at those past successes and look at the root cause of success, like how did we get there? What was really the reason we were able to get to this point and have it succeed and do well, or get this person on board? And so we really kind of being able to do that was really key. So that's one way to improve success, is to analyze your past successes, and that'll help you improve your discernment because you start to see the patterns that exist. Number 2, learn how others think, especially those that you respect who have a gift in this area. Talking to Neil, somebody I do respect. We've worked together. We have very similar mindsets, and we have similar backgrounds. And so by talking to him, I got a little bit of insight into his thoughts. And like, as I said, even though I said, hey, this is what's going on, he was like, oh, well, great. Now you have an opportunity. I mean, where he sees chaos, or I saw chaos, I'm sorry, he saw an opportunity. And he was like, this is great. This is a great opportunity. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But after we talked through it, he gave me his thought process. Now, he doesn't have any skin in the game. He could care less what way I go. But by taking the time and giving me what his thought process would be, and then telling me, hey, you've done this before, then it sort of gave me, oh, yeah, you start to get beyond sort of the noise, if you will. And I will say that number 3 would be follow your intuition. You know, we can get stuck in the world and the noise that the world tells us, and we get stuck in our technology when sometimes we just got to remove ourselves. The blessing of the traffic was I just had to turn everything off, and I couldn't go anywhere. I was sort of positioned in one spot in a car, but there was no one else around with me, with one goal, and that's to get home. And I could hear what Neil was telling me. And using my intuition as he talked, it's more and more we talked, it got clearer and clearer to the point I literally got into my driveway, and we ended the phone call. And at the end of that phone call, I was like, wow, that was powerful. So following your intuition. And number 4, expanding your experiences, or in my case, remembering those experiences. Having that conversation with Neil and talking about things that we did 15 years ago, and just against all odds, how we were able to do that. And even in some of the things that he did, it just reminded me that I've got a lot of tools in the toolbox, and I don't have to reinvent things. I don't really have to find something new. That instead, I just have to go back into the toolbox and say, hey, here's what we did before. Let's try it. It might work, right? So, as I said before, knowledge and wisdom is that there's a difference when we talk about discernment in this area. And I think discernment separates good leaders from truly gifted leaders. I think it is important as a leader that we tap into discernment, that we look into our intuition, that we quiet our mind and listen to the tiny voice inside that says, hey, you're doing a great job. Hey, you got this. Hey, you know what you need to do next. Hey, everything will be okay. We need to start listening to that little voice and stop worrying about the noise of the world. So, here's your challenge for this week. You know, Wednesday's a 4th of July holiday, so many of us will have time off. And while we're going to be spending time with family and friends, why not take a moment, since you don't have to get up early and go to work, take a moment, think about some of the things that you need to make decisions on, or steps you need to take, or things that are just on your mind. And take a moment to just sit in the classroom of silence and just think about what your next steps should be. And then just wait. Wait for all the noise to fall away, and instead hear what your wisdom and discernment are actually telling you. That's my challenge for you this week, is just to take some time to be still. Take some time to sit in silence. Doesn't have to be for long, but allow yourself to tap into that. And the more you can do that, I think the more gifted you'll be as a leader. Thank you for watching this episode of Monday Morning Leadership Bites. Have a great week.